what I'd like to do is to introduce you to a model which was first published in this book, which is Self-Coaching Leadership by yours truly. That one by John Wiley, and it's about leadership traits. So what are those traits? What is that leadership model that the traits refer to? So how do we get this information? It's come from the training room, from literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of individuals who through trainings have looked at the area of leadership and come up with what they think is important in the people, best leaders that they've had access to. And what we've done is to keep all of that from the flip charts and to record it, set it all down, and to find something very, a lot of consistency in the feedback that we've had from people about what they think as managers and directors and leaders today of what they're experiencing when they see the best possible managers and leaders around them. On that basis, what we now have is 7 leader traits and 4 people skills, so 11 different factors. There are a number which we call trust factors, and there are 7 of those, and the reason for that is that they are absolutely critical to trust. A lot of the other factors in leadership, if sometimes you fall a bit short or you don't quite make the grade, you can get away with it. People will allow you a little bit of leeway. But there are 7 of these leadership factors which are so important to be consistent with that if you make one mistake with one individual, or worse still with a whole team, it's maybe very difficult to recover from. We get a so-called free fall, if you like, in the trust that we get from that individual or those individuals who we've let down. So today we're going to start, I think, with those 7 trust factors and have a quick look at those, and so that we can identify them. And maybe you might find it useful to, in each case, is to set down 0 to 10 where you are with those trust factors. So in other words, how good are you in each of these trust factors? And then perhaps later on you might think about, well, could I improve that? How would I do that? Where would I like it to be, and over what time period? Is that realistic? Can I manage that and do it as a structured personal development plan around leadership? So let's start with 2 of the trust factors which fall in the people skills area. And these are quite simple ones. One is about being supportive to individuals. They want you to be reliably supportive. Now you'll have to interpret that from your own knowledge of what that means and what you think you would like in terms of support. But remember, in looking at Series 1, that the level of support that an individual needs tends to be pretty specific to them. So there'll be a general level of support for everybody and some tailoring of that to meet the specific needs of individuals. And we do that by questioning, by facilitation, by listening well. So that's one of the trust factors. And if we fail to support someone well, really do fall down on that one, it can really massively affect. We can lose that trust, and we may never ever get that back. Now the second of those people skills, which is a trust factor, is to be interested in people. So an individual will want you to be interested in them. Now obviously if there's an acute situation, an urgent situation, you're probably not going to ask them, whether they had a good holiday or not. You're just going to get on with the job. But we need to be generally interested. If we're taking a call with somebody who works for us, let's say, or one of the stakeholders who is important to us in our career, and they can hear key strokes on the keyboard, or the rustling of paper, or scribbling, or the receiver covered over and a conversation going on with someone else, that isn't a good feeling. And when we do that to people, they can feel pretty put off by you, and you can lose trust very, very, very quickly. So that's the second of the trust factors that sits in the people skills one, and ones which can be hugely damaging if we don't get those right. So how well do you do that? 0 to 10. How well are you supporting people in a way that's appropriate to them individually? And how do you show that you are interested by giving people time, by stopping informally as opposed to just doing that formally, by having conversations which are not about work, but maybe about other things, and is not wasted time because it's going to tell you about what's important to them and will give you clues about how to motivate them. So what else is there? Well, there are 5 other factors in the leadership traits which I'm just going to quickly go through now, if I may. And again, 0 to 10, how well are you doing now? Where would you like it to be? How can you make that difference? One of the others, and in video 2, should you join us for that, we will see quite an interesting potential conflict here, and that is reliability and consistency. So are we being reliable, and are we consistent in how we manage people in different circumstances? In other words, how predictable are we? Now, people like that, and as we'll see in video 2, we'll also look at flexibility and how these actually, although they seem in conflict, actually are not in conflict. How can we be consistent and reliable, but also be flexible? That's for video 2. But for the moment, reliability and consistency are important. So how well do you do that now? How well could you do that, and over what time span if you want to change it? When we let people down in terms of reliability, when we don't meet expectations in terms of our consistency, people do get put off very quickly. They can suddenly stick you in the bad box, and that's not a good place to be when you want a job done in somebody's private time. You want them to work late, or you want something done particularly well for a particular customer, or whether it's an internal or external customer. The 4th trust factor I'd like to go through is also a leadership trait, and that is the accepting responsibility. And I'm pretty certain, because we see this in the training room, that it's one that most of my listeners today will think of as being pretty important to them too. In other words, an individual will carry the can when something goes wrong. They won't just pass the buck down, they won't blame you, they won't say, oh, well, I've taken responsibility, but actually, you don't trust them, and they've dropped you in it. So they will accept responsibility. Absolutely critical. Get that wrong once, and again, you can very, very severely damage a relationship, and if you're unlucky, that can become a mood, a subculture within part of your team, which can be highly disruptive and destructive. The other one, which is sort of related in a way, and this is about discretion. So are you responsible enough to be discreet? Sometimes we get snippets of information about people, we learn more in listening to them, and it would be quite easy sometimes to let other people have access to that when we're having a few drinks somewhere. Not a good idea. If we share a bit of privileged information about someone, imagine if it's you, and you've told somebody something that's personal to you about the object of your career, or a desire to change your career, or some other personal factor which perhaps you don't want the general public to know, and you hear some rumour about yourself. What is that like? Same for other people, and if we're the source of that, or thought to be the source of that, the chances are they're not going to come and confront us. The chances are they're just going to be disruptive and unhelpful, and maybe start dissing us in other areas of the business, and having an effect on our standing and our careers. So very important to get that right. So that's another trust factor. That's that discretion. 2 more leadership traits which are trust factors. And one of those is walking the talk. So, do we walk the talk? Do we say do this and do something else, or do we actually believe it and do it ourselves? Very, 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 very important indeed to walk the talk, not just talk about it and set boundaries and frames for people, and not follow those ourselves. Again, it's about trust. When we don't do what we say we're going to do, or we don't do what we expect others to do, then it's very, very, very much a bad situation, and one that's very difficult to recover from as well. It can take a long time to recover from that one. So people need to see the modified behaviours over a long time before they would necessarily accept that was maybe a one-off, unless they get an apology. And the last, again related to that, is something called authenticity. So it's not just walking the talk and doing what you say you're going to do, it's more about believability. So do people trust you because they believe that you are who you say you are and who you appear to be? Now, many of us come into work and we are who we are all the time. For other people, we know this again from the training room, other people literally have to step up to the plate in going to work. They literally have to build up. Some people rely on nicotine, other people rely on caffeine, other people just get themselves wound up in order to try and be something else at work. Very common with younger managers early on in their careers, and sometimes it develops into a habit. There's nothing wrong in having a modified persona for work, particularly if your nature isn't ideally suited to the culture you are in. But the danger in it is that you cease to be really believable, and that is a definite no-no in terms of the trust factor. So will people trust you? They will trust you less, and the more acting you do, the more different you are at work to how you really are as an individual, then the less likely it is that people are going to trust you, they're going to follow you, and they're going to perform at the level that you might wish them to do in those teams. So the authenticity area is one where if you want to make a difference, it's about personal development, it's about being more open, it's about being more true to yourself and making sure that that, of course, is appropriate and acceptable within the culture in which you work. Sometimes, of course, that's a reason for moving to another culture which is better suited to you and your needs to express yourself.